This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. The book is Least Expected by Jordyn Griffin. Chloe Murphy is a single mother to 9-month-old Colton Murphy. He is her entire world, and she would do anything to protect him. After a traumatizing time in her life and the passing of her parents, she moves halfway across the country to live with her best friend, Summer Jones. Summer introduces Chloe to her world, which includes the eye candy NHL star Reed Collins. Chloe finds love when she least expected it. But can she keep the man of her dreams when her ex has started stalking her? The same man who almost took her and her son's life when she lived in California. A quick marriage, pregnancy, and adoption brings a small family together in hopes that the past stays in the past. But when the ex breaks in while Chloe's home alone, can she hold him off until help arrives? Jordyn Griffin is California born and raised, growing up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, tucked away in a small community near Yosemite National Park. She was raised on a small family-operated cattle ranch where she spent countless hours horseback and working with different animals. Jordyn attended California State University, Fresno, where she pursued a degree in education and has spent the last few years in the classroom. At State, she met her now husband, and they have been married for 4 years, living on a farm in Central California. She is a dog mom to 3 large dogs and is a proud aunt to her nephew and niece. She is a passionate hockey fan. We'll ask about that. And she loves traveling, photography, and getting lost in a good book. Happy to have Jordyn Griffin join me for the very first time on Speaking of Writers. Welcome, Jordyn.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So we'll get to the hockey thing in a moment, but let's talk about this story. And how did you come up with this story?
It kind of happened on accident. Well, I guess not really accident because everything comes to fruition. But work was just kind of getting a lot. So I would just come home and put hockey on, and then I would just start typing. And I never really knew where the chapters were leading me as I was writing. I would have my main characters, but every day I didn't know kind of what was in store for them. So it was kind of like a surprise for me as I was writing it. But I think it was more of an outlet for me. And so I just kind of took my surroundings a little bit, my love of hockey that we're going to get into. But also I put a little bit of my personality, my characteristics, or like my past into a little bit of each of my characters. So the story kind of just wrote itself. I was just putting words to paper. So that's really all I can say. I don't really have it wasn't a set goal. I didn't have a game plan at the time.
What about Chloe Murphy? How did you create her?
I kind of went off of, this is not my natural hair color, but I kind of based her off of me growing up a little bit. I've never had an abusive ex or any of that. I've never lost my parents, but a lot of her struggle in finding who she is as a person, having to find her balance, find her strength to overcome different obstacles. I kind of just built her based off of my experiences in that and kind of just put in like my emotions, my experiences, all of that into her and kind of just made her as a part of who I was in the past.
What about your journey to wanting to be a writer? How did that come about?
I've always had a passion for reading. I've also always had a passion for storytelling. When I was in middle school and high school, I followed the Professional Writing Association very carefully. I always wanted to be a sports journalist, mainly in like the Western industry, which was something that I had a lot of experience in growing up on a cattle ranch. So I actually wanted to become a journalist. So I would start coming up with fake press releases when I was in middle school and high school, just following the sport, and then got to college. And I originally was pursuing a degree in communications and journalism. And then along the way, I just kind of like fell off of that wagon and found myself on the path for education and wanting to kind of just be that role model icon, somebody that can help students that were kind of like me in school, make sure those kids were being set up for success. And so I took more of a passion in that route. And then just the last few years, I've just kind of started going back to who I was originally. And I do, I wrote my first book, working on number two. But I'm also writing articles twice a week, on the San Jose Sharks hockey team. So I think it was something that was embedded into my DNA. And I just had to find the one thing that kind of like let that shine and let that actually like fuel me to go back to doing it.
Did you always know that you were a pretty good storyteller, even back in middle school?
Yeah, I feel like writers always have self-doubt in themselves, or we always think that our work is not that great, or we're always just kind of like, knocking ourselves down off a pedestal a little bit. But my family has always egged me on, my friends, everyone, like you need to be a writer, you need to be a writer, like you're so good with words. And there's still things that I have to learn, since I did take a detour, but I guess in my head, I never thought I was that great. It took a lot of people telling me to finally listen to myself. But originally, I did not think that it was going to go anywhere.
How did you decide on the theme and genre for this story, Least Expected?
As I mentioned, work was kind of getting a little too much. So I would come home and kind of just turn hockey on because it's a good way to just kind of shut your mind off a little bit, focus on something completely different. I wouldn't touch my phone for like the whole 2 hours the game would be playing. Um, and so I think I didn't originally intend for my book to have a hockey route. But I think it was just based on my surroundings and what I was just kind of submerging myself into. Um, and it just worked out.
All right, so let's talk hockey. You mentioned the San Jose Sharks. I think you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I am.
I'm a lifelong New York Islanders fan, so I know hockey and get it very well. So why hockey for you? Is your husband a big hockey fan?
No. Growing up where I did in really rural community, you would have to drive hours to go to a rink. So it wasn't something that I was raised with. My dad is when you think of old Western cowboys like John Wayne, like that is my father. So that was the world that I grew up in. So, but I did play sports, mainly volleyball, soccer, but hockey was just never something that I thought about. And then when college started, like I would just like put it on as background noise type of a thing when I was getting work done. Never really like paid attention. And then the last few years, I think it really took my brother and sister-in-law moving to Minnesota with my niece and nephew to where I kind of was like, okay, I have to like Minnesota's a big hockey state.
Mm-hmm.
My nephew is definitely going to be playing. So I had kind of like started paying more attention. And then just within the last like year or so, I've just been 100% just dedicated to the sport. Yeah, I will cancel social outings if there's a game on.
And it's as we're recording this, it is back.
It
So
is that.
see, the
Yeah.
regular season just started, so hockey is back. How about your experience, Jordyn, with publishing? What has it been like?
It hasn't been too bad. I feel like you have like your ups and downs and your moments. My publisher's been really good about communicating things with me and just really being honest and straightforward. And then with New Link Media, my media area, my manager on that end has been awesome. They've made the process painless in a sense, to where I don't really have to worry about much of anything. We talk once a week, twice a week at most. Um, they contacted me a few months ago mentioning there was inquiries about making my book into Spanish. So now we're going through that route and trying to get that completed. So hopefully next few months we'll have that done. But it was probably not what I expected. I thought I was going to have to hop through more hoops. And I mean, I thought I was going to have to reach out to multiple publishers to see if anyone would want to take on me, like take on my role, take on my book. But Milton and Hugo immediately jumped in feet first and like, nope, we're going to do this. And they've really provided a lot of opportunities for me, and for my book.
Jordyn Griffin is my guest here. Her book is Least Expected. It's available at barnesandnoble.com, also amazon.com. What's the best thing about being a writer?
I would say just having the freedom to just write what you want. I mean, I'm a big reader. I've read 140 books since January. And the best part about it is that each author tells a different story a different way. It could be the same genre, it could have the same tropes, but it is completely different. And I just love that you have the freedom to tell the story how you want to tell it. And people are going to either love it or they're going to hate it. But at the end of the day, it's your work of art. You're the one that went through everything. And at the end of the day, you can say, hey, I'm a published author. Like, not a lot of people can really say that. And not a lot of people do. So I just think having that freedom to just say what you want and support it.
You said you read what? You're up to 140 books since January of this year. What genres do you enjoy reading?
It kind of varies. I'm into a lot of like mystery thriller. I went on a long hockey romance one because there's just so many books. So you find one author, you're like, oh, this is a good author, and then you start going down that list of like their books. So you start following into like their area and reading all their books. So I just kind of bounce around. I do read a lot of Westerns. I collect a lot of Lewis L'Amour books. So every now and then I'll pull one of those out. And it just kind of depends on my mood.
Any books on hockey?
Yeah, so I've read all of the L. Kennedy hockey romance books. I've read those ones, but I haven't read any like biographies or anything like that this year at least. But yeah, just a lot of the hockey romance, L. Kennedy style, mainly hers, the ones I really were drawn to the first time around when I first started picking them up this year.
So you got your first book done, and you teased a little bit earlier. You are working on the sophomore effort, right?
Yes.
Can you give us a sneak peek into what it's about?
So it's kind of going to be going backwards a little bit. So this will be the story about Chloe's best friend Summer and her boyfriend Matt. So they were already together in Least Expected. So I'm just kind of going back and rewriting their story at this time. So I'm about 14 chapters in, just kind of taking my time with it just to make sure everything's squared away in my mind. And I'm taking the approach of I'm going to know what the chapters are telling me every day when I write, just because I've already established who they are and kind of a little bit about them in the first book. So this one will be just based on them and then their path of finding each other.
What's been the response from your friends, family, husband to this first book?
They were all surprised. I actually did not tell anybody I wrote a book until Milton and Hugo said that they wanted to take me on, and then I kind of had to fess up. My husband was a little surprised, but he wasn't, just because he's a very observant person. Excuse me. So he already knew that I was working on something just based on me coming home and writing, but he doesn't poke and prod. He just lets me like take my time and getting that out to him. My parents were a little shocked because I don't see them as often, so they wouldn't have known or seen the signs. But they're very proud. I will say my sister-in-law has probably been my biggest cheerleader. She was the one person I'm like, hey, I have to tell her because we tell each other everything, which means I had to fess up to my husband because he had to know before I told her. But she's been my biggest cheerleader and support, and she has an established life in Minnesota with a lot of hockey fans. So she just started sending out the link right away and was like, okay, it's already out here. I've hit XYZ so many people. So she's really taking it on to helping me spread word. But yeah, everyone's been super proud. I was in education, so that's why I did a pen name. But my parents that I was friends with on Facebook, they purchased the book, and I've been getting messages from them left and right, like not only saying that they miss me in the classroom, but also that they've loved my writing, they love my book, and they can't wait for number 2. So the support has been endless, and definitely something that I didn't expect from a lot of people. I'm very closed off and I'm very hard on myself. So having that kind of praise has kind of spurred me on to really focus more on my writing and to make something out of it.
And what would you like readers to take away from Least Expected?
It's never too late to start. That's like I said with Chloe, stand your ground, find your strength, do what you need to do for yourself, lean on those around you. There was a time where I didn't lean on anyone. I was just kind of in my own little bubble, and that's not healthy. And it's okay to ask for help. And again, it's never too late to start. I just turned 30 and I left my teaching career to take on writing. And it's something that 5 years ago I'd have been like, it's too late. I can't change my degree. But yeah, it's never too late to go after what you want.
The book is Least Expected. The author is Jordyn Griffin. It's available at Amazon, also Barnes and Noble. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And this is the Speaking of Writers podcast. This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards.